For more than 50 years, one woman has walked into thousands of rooms, shaken thousands of hands, and asked for almost nothing in return. No headlines chasing, no interviews begging for sympathy, just work, quiet and steady, day after day. And then, as the year turned and a new age dawned over the British monarchy, this same woman, the one everyone thought would carry the crown's heaviest load forever, quietly stepped back from the top of the list. What she said next did not shout. It did not need to. In just a few careful words, Princess Anne reminded an entire nation what royalty was ever supposed to mean. This is the story of a princess who was almost kidnapped, nearly killed by her own horse, overtaken in her own record, and still refused to slow down. This is the story of how the calmest voice in the palace became the one everyone finally chose to listen to. Anne Elizabeth Alice Louise was born on 15 August 1950, the second child and only daughter of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. From the very start, she stood in an unusual place. She was born third in line to the throne, close enough to feel its weight, yet far enough to know she would probably never wear the crown herself. As her younger brothers arrived, she slipped further down the line. Today, she sits 18th. For many people, that might have felt like being pushed to the side. For Anne, it became a strange kind of freedom. She did not have to wait for a throne. She could simply get to work. And so she did. Her first official royal duty came in 1969, when she was just 18 years old, meeting Welsh soldiers on behalf of the crown. It was the beginning of a working life that would outlast almost everyone around her. She was educated at Benenden School, learned early that duty came before comfort, and carried that lesson for the rest of her life. But Anne was never only a princess in a fine dress. She was an athlete with real fire. A gifted equestrian, she won a gold medal at the 1971 European Eventing Championships and 2 silver medals in 1975. Then, in 1976, she made history that no royal before her had touched. She became the first member of the British royal family ever to compete in the Olympic Games. She rode for her country, not for applause, and she did it as a working royal who happened to be world-class on horseback. Even in those early years, a pattern was forming that would define her whole life. Anne did not seek the spotlight. She earned respect through effort, and she let the results speak. While others chased attention, she chased usefulness. That quiet strength would soon be tested in the most frightening way imaginable, on an ordinary London evening that could have ended everything. On the night of 20 March 1974, Princess Anne's car was driving down the Mall in central London when another vehicle suddenly forced it to stop. A man named Ian Ball stepped out with a gun. His plan was as shocking as it was mad. He wanted to kidnap the young princess and demand an enormous ransom. Shots were fired. Anne's bodyguard, her driver, a nearby police officer, and a passing journalist were all wounded as they tried to protect her. It was chaos, violence, and terror all in a matter of minutes. And in the middle of it stood Anne, 23 years old, with a gunman ordering her to get out of the car and come with him. What happened next became legend. Anne refused. According to the story that has followed her for decades, she looked at the man trying to drag her away and gave a reply so calm and so sharp that it has never been forgotten. She was not going anywhere with him, and she made that very clear. She did not faint. She did not beg. She held her ground until help arrived and the attacker was overpowered. Ball later pleaded guilty to attempted murder and kidnapping. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and detained in mental hospitals for many years. Remarkably, in 2025, more than 50 years after that night, he surfaced again, claiming that he had never truly meant to succeed and that the whole thing had been a stunt designed to fail. Whatever the truth of his later words, the events of that night were real and deadly serious. People were shot. A young woman's life was genuinely in danger, and yet the lasting image of that night is not fear. It is the picture of a princess who kept her nerve when armed men and flying bullets surrounded her. That single night told the whole country something important about Anne. Underneath the polite royal manners was a spine of steel. She was not fragile. She was not for show. When the worst happened, she did not crumble. That toughness would carry her through the decades ahead, through public duty, private loss, and eventually a moment when her own body would betray her far more quietly and far more painfully than any kidnapper ever could. Over the years that followed, Princess Anne built a record that almost no royal could match. She became the Princess Royal in 1987, a rare title given by the monarch to the eldest daughter. She joined the International Olympic Committee in 1988, and most of all, she worked. She attended more than 20,000 official engagements since beginning royal duties, a number so large it is hard to even picture. Charities, hospitals, military units, schools, farming groups, first aid organizations. She showed up for all of them year after year, often without any cameras following her. A Canadian official once described her simple attitude toward royal life in a way that stuck. Her belief was to keep busy, to be there to work, to do good, and to meet as many people as possible. That was Anne in one breath. No drama, no complaints, just service. For years this earned her a quiet crown of her own. She was repeatedly named the hardest-working member of the royal family, carrying out more official engagements than anyone else, sometimes even more than the Queen herself. In 2023, she logged 433 engagements. In 2024, she pushed that to 457. She was 70-something years old and still increasing her workload, not reducing it. Then came a shift that felt almost impossible. In 2025, Princess Anne completed 478 engagements, an even heavier year than before. And yet, for the first time in a long while, she was no longer number one. Her older brother, King Charles III, carried out 532 engagements that year and quietly took the top spot. Anne, the tireless worker, had been overtaken, not because she slowed down, but because the king himself stepped forward. It was a small change on paper, just a difference in numbers, but it carried a bigger meaning. The monarchy was entering a new chapter under Charles, and the roles inside the family were shifting. Even so, royal fans refused to let her effort go unnoticed. They flooded social media with praise, calling the 75-year-old a trooper, and marveling that she was still working so hard at an age when most people have long since rested. She had lost a title, yet somehow gained even more admiration. The heaviest test of these later years did not come from a rival or a record. It came on a quiet Sunday at Gatcombe Park, her country home. In 2024, Princess Anne was seriously injured in an incident involving one of her own horses. She suffered head injuries and concussion and was taken to Southmead Hospital in Bristol. For a woman who had spent her whole life around horses, who had ridden at the Olympics and lived and breathed the equestrian world, it was a cruel kind of danger. The very animals she loved most had nearly taken her from her family. Her husband, Sir Timothy Lawrence, visited her in hospital and shared careful updates, saying she was recovering well. The nation held its breath. Anne, always the one holding everything together for everyone else, was suddenly the one who needed care. From her recovery, she sent word expressing her regret at missing engagements she had promised to attend, including a planned visit connected to Canada. Even flat on her back, her first thought was the duty she could not perform. That single detail says everything about her. Most people, after such an injury, would think only of themselves. Anne thought about the people she had let down, but she did not stay down for long. In a moment that moved royal watchers deeply, she returned to horseback at the Trooping the Color parade, riding once again in public for the first time since the accident. It was more than a ceremony. It was proof. She had been knocked down by the thing she loved, and she had chosen to climb back on. That is a picture of courage that no script could invent, because it actually happened. As the monarchy moved into its new era, with King Charles now carrying the greatest share of the work and a younger generation slowly stepping up, Anne became something the family badly needed. She became the steady one. When the king was away, she held down the fort. When commemorations demanded a serious and reliable figure, she traveled the world from Greece to Bermuda to represent the crown with dignity. She did not seek a bigger role. She simply filled the gap, as she always had, quietly and completely. And so we return to the quiet statement that opened this story, the words that landed softly yet carried real weight. As 2026 began, Princess Anne did not make a dramatic announcement about herself. She made a public statement about other people. As president of the Carers Trust, she spoke up for the millions of unpaid carers across Britain, the exhausted and often forgotten people who look after sick or elderly family members out of pure love. She reminded the country that carers are the backbone of society, giving service quietly at a heavy personal cost without asking for reward. She noted that the organization had supported more than 1 million carers in a single year. It was, in truth, a rare public message from a woman who almost never speaks about her feelings in public. But listen closely, and you can hear that she was really describing her own life's belief. Service given out of love, despite the price. That is exactly how Anne has lived for more than 50 years. In a monarchy now facing a new era, with a new king, new pressures, and a public that has grown tired of scandal and noise, her message stood out precisely because it was so plain and so true. She did not ask for attention. She turned the attention toward people who had none. This is why, even after being overtaken in her own record, even at 75, even after a frightening injury, Princess Anne quietly became the figure so many people point to as the heart of the family. She survived a kidnapping without losing her nerve. She made Olympic history. She worked harder and longer than almost anyone in royal life. She fell, and she got back on the horse. And when she finally chose to speak, she used her voice not for herself, but for the forgotten. The royal family is indeed facing a new era. Thrones will pass, records will change, and younger faces will rise. But the lesson Anne leaves behind is timeless. Real royalty was never about the crown or the headlines. It was about showing up, doing the work, and caring for people who cannot repay you. In an age of noise, the calmest voice in the palace may just be the one that lasts the longest.